So when we talk about property damage, and I just will say again, you do have a right to protect your property. We're kind of thinking of like, that's your home, it's something substantial, and the wording is significant. Like, it's a bit subjective. We're interpreting what is significant damage. And I'm telling you that my guys and I are not gonna say, you know, A, do you have an attractant? Did you invite it on yourself in the first place? B, what's the level of damage that you've sustained? And sometimes it's dramatic, right? I mean, if you've ever seen a house that a cabin that a bear has really got, or the cars, we have very recent examples, that's pretty destructive. So really good reasons to, you know, not leave any pistachios in your car, or yeah. And one of the problems is, say the bear scores something nice out of a card. We're told, hey, cars have food. You might be really good. You might be spotless. You might have bleached the interior, all the plastic in your car, and there's no food scent. And that bear's like, hey, one of these things, you know, this contraption that I can rip open is a good place to find food. And they might just go try it out, and then when the door closes, they're going to pretty much total the inside of your car before they figure out that there's not a meal in there. So in Yosemite, just kind of offhand, there's a paper written by a biologist, published scientific paper, and it's about foraging preferences of black bears in the Yosemite Valley. And they came out to say that minivans were the selected place to forage. Because if you have a bunch of little ones, you know, and snacks everywhere, there's probably some good scores in there. So, really interesting stuff. That's really what I have just for background, and I want to get into some of these specific questions about, we have lists of questions, and I think we'll go through those and see if we can answer them. I'm not sure if my colleagues with the sheriff's department might go, we could maybe just, I'm totally easy. I could just start answering ones that are my department, or you can go. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Captain James Williams of the Sheriff's Department. I just thought this was a really good spot right here before we started with the regular questions to explain that what he just told you all about bears, we have no idea about any of that stuff. The deputy sheriffs are not equipped to deal with bears. More than likely, if a deputy is having to deal with a bear, it's likely the bear is not afraid of us and run away. The bear is going to get hurt. So that's why we want to emphasize that they are the experts on. I had no idea of a fruit tree and a bird feeder and all that. We know that when we show up on a bear call, is somebody in danger? Is the deputy now in danger? We're trying to scare the thing off. He's going to be running around with a rifle probably. And if things don't go well, you know, I know you're concerned about gunfire and accidental things happening and ricochets and that kind of stuff. When we get involved in that kind of stuff, the likelihood of that is a little bit higher. These folks know what they're doing when it comes to dealing with this wildlife, the rules, what's good, what's bad, how to deal with these animals safely. And so I just wanted to preface that before we got into any specific questions, just so everybody has a good understanding. I know we get here a lot quicker. We have a deputy patrolling the county 24 hours a day. On weekends, I'm sure you see the deputies up here, because we're trying to help you out with your human issues, especially in the winter, obviously. But hopefully we're getting a little bit better even during the summertime. But that's our focus. That's what we're good at, or at least a little better at, is dealing with those human interactions and trying to keep them out of your yard and, you know, throwing trash everywhere and that kind of stuff. When it comes to all these animal issues, even though we can get here quick, you're going to get a different response than you're going to get out of the experts who really know what they're doing. So I just wanted to preface all that before we got into the specifics.
Thank you, Captain Williams, and that was a really great point that he brought up. We, as the Department of Fish and Wildlife, we don't have a first responder role. My guys, as a general rule, are not on the weekend. our game wardens, and Warden Garcia just pulled up over here. He's probably doing something else that delayed him, but we typically have a warden on call over the weekend and most times, but essentially we're outnumbered by, I don't know what the number is, but it's way more than 10 to 1. So, when there's a potential public safety issue, we're going to trust the judgment of our colleagues with law enforcement that are going to say, hey, that's a threat. And if I could, the way we can really avoid having those interactions, and the other, I know there's a question on here, bears getting hit on the road. These conflicts, we just broadly call them conflicts with people, right? Human-wildlife conflicts. They happen primarily because we're giving wildlife, in this case bears, a reason to be in our neighborhoods. Bears generally don't get hit on the road unless that we've trained them that, hey, trash cans have food in them, and they're going to be wandering around, and then they're now vulnerable. They're doing all these things around us, and then they decide that, the open window, trying to cool off on a hot day, maybe there's some food smell in your kitchen, and now we have a potentially dangerous situation for human safety, and that's where I don't want to discourage anyone. If if there's any kind of a threat, call 911. We're going to do everything we can to support and try and really avoid these situations, but it's essentially we're supporting you, the community, to try to get the word out among your community to hopefully not have the kind of pretext, the factors that are bringing these bears into conflict. So I'm gonna maybe start with some of the questions, and we can take other questions too. I don't have a problem. And this is a really good one that's for my department. When is it appropriate to make an incident report with a bear run-in? So we have an online system, the Wildlife Incident Reporting System. Is that what's the easiest way? Kevin could tell us. How would you just do a search, like if you're on the internet, California Wildlife Incident Reporting?
Yeah, I mean, just Google, you can even search CDFW WIR or CDFW Wildlife Incident Report, and it'll be the first item that pops up on your cursory basic Google search.
So Wildlife Incident Report, we're calling them a WIR. And I will say that we often don't hear about. A lot of times, something will come up, it'll get to a critical level, we come out and respond, and we're told, oh, well, this has been going on. We don't know that, as far as we know, that didn't happen unless it's documented. So I would encourage folks, anytime you see an interaction of like a bear in trash, a bear getting a reward, maybe even a bear in a fruit tree, you're invited to please fill out this wildlife incident report, and it basically goes by a big old map geographically, and it's probably going to get sent to Kevin or one of my other staff, Chanel or Rudy, depending on where it lands. And we're a team. We try to work together to help solve these problems, but somebody's going to look at it. We're going to say, hey, thank you. If it's a sighting of a bear, we pretty much we do get those from all over the place. It's usually folks that they're new. We can't do a whole lot with that. We know there's bears all over the place, but any of these sort of interactions, or your neighbors maybe feeding, the other side. So that's a wildlife incident report. Let me just read the rest of the question, because the other is a report of behavior that's actually maybe illegal. So let me just finish this question first. So an incident report is you see something a bear is doing. If you see or stumble on bait that's been left and you think someone's intentionally feeding, that's a criminal issue, and I think Warden Garcia would encourage us to call the CalTIP number. We want our law enforcement to follow that up, because that's the only way we're gonna really correct intentional illegal behavior. We get that not everybody, like a new, say a short-term renter, maybe doesn't know or doesn't get the message what to do with their securing their trash, not leaving food out on the picnic table. Those aren't, in my mind, really a law enforcement issue. That's an education issue, and I think odds are our law enforcement partners are going to, give some education and a warning. But if you see intentional feeding, like to us, that's this thing that's going to, in all likelihood, one way or another, lead to really bad conflict, probably a dead bear. So an incident report does not lead to any of that. So the second question, when's it appropriate to make an incident report with a bear running? I know some residents are apprehensive because they don't want the bear to be killed. So incident report is not at all, unless you're going to tell us that it bit somebody. If there's actually, that is one of the, we have a code red sort of line, and folks that have been around here a while will remember, I think it was 2013, a gal got bitten in her sleeping bag. She was sleeping outside of a cabin at Forest Home and apparently had no food in her sleeping bag. This big bear came along and took a chomp out of her foot. So she was okay. She had to go to the ER, obviously get like rabies shots. So I just want to give you a little background on what our response is. So I got called on that, and I was probably not even 100 yards from where the gal got bitten, and there's a bear wandering across. It was just across the street from the big parking lot on this side of the road at Forest Home. So I pulled into that parking lot, and there's a bear wandering out. And I had to say, well, what's the rule of engagement here? Is that the bear? And we didn't want to, I had the option of actually shooting that bear, and we had a consultation. We don't go all cowboy on this stuff. What are the rules of engagement? What are we doing? So we did not do that. We ended up setting up traps. We had actually a DNA sample. We've got an awesome forensics lab. The gal in the forensics lab worked the weekend. We had overnight, next day packages sent FedEx, refrigerated with samples of hair and blood from bears, because we trapped 4 bears in these kind of called culvert traps, those trailer traps. And 3 of them I parked in my backyard. Fortunately, I could squeeze them in there with tarps on them, and kept them up in Big Bear where they wouldn't be too hot. 4th was actually, we had a volunteer at animal zoo facility, held on to the bear, and then we were able to do the DNA testing, and we found out that the guilty bear was actually the one that was in this other facility. We had to test that bear for rabies, and if you guys know about rabies, the only way you can tell if something's rabid is to look at its brain. So we had to euthanize that bear, but the cool part, that's not cool. The cool part is we could be really selective, and we're like, that is the bear that bit this person. So within that same area, like those traps were within, not 100 yards of where the gal got bitten, we trapped these 3 other bears. Probably if we left traps open, we'd probably find some more. Those bears were tagged and then released. We did haze them. So, we're not out to whack bears. I just, want to know, we went, the amount of kind of like money and effort and folks and overtime and all that go into this. Like, I was down here every night every time we caught a bear, it was 2 or 3 in the morning, I came on down here, and our law enforcement worked it. So I just want to make the point, we do have some tools to identify if we had substantial damage, say, to a home. We want to get, along those lines, like a genetic sample. If there's a broken window and the bear went through it, Kevin or Rudy or myself, or someone's probably going to come and try and grab some of this hair or blood, because we want to be able to identify, not that that means it's a death sentence, but we want to identify that individual bear so we can look and see what is this pattern, and we're hoping to interrupt that pattern by hazing them, by your community's cooperation of removing these rewards that they're getting. But it's really something where we want to know, just like with that we call it public safety, the code red bear, we want to know we got the right bear. That's why we want to put collars and ear tags, so if we have again and again and again the situation, we're going to be looking for a different response. It's not necessarily lethal, but we're probably not going to just trap it and hit it with a beanbag again and leave it in your neighborhood. So that's when we have to come up with plan B or plan C, and it's possible that we will get we'll be told that that bear needs to be euthanized because we think it's it's an ongoing threat, someone could get hurt. But that is absolutely the last step. And just FYI, those decisions, I have a PhD, I've been working on this stuff, we have veterinarians and other stuff, we think we're the experts. These decisions are now being made in Sacramento. So we make our recommendations, we write up our case, but it's gotten to be a very high level. And the good part about that is it means we are certainly not out making decisions to, lethally remove bears. So let me just jump on this list again and see which ones best apply to.
Housekeeping, there's a cooler full of water in the back, thanks to Frank. If anybody wants water, please grab one.
Awesome. Thank you. Question number 2 is, when can I shoot a bear? Well, we have a hunting season for bears. You can get a bear tag. You cannot be within 300 yards of a home or an outbuilding or within 400 yards of any kind of a bait. I believe our law enforcement agrees that trash can be bait. So we've had questions about the Falls picnic area. There's a dumpster, it gets propped open. The interpretation was that's baiting. So a hunter, our agency licenses hunters. We have regulated hunting. We don't want it to be, anything that's a conflict around people. What other time can you shoot a bear? If you're physically threatened in your home, your front yard, if you feel threatened, if your pet was being attacked by a bear, arguably if it was breaking down your door, there will be an investigation. So if the situation, again, you're not a hunter, but you're saying, oh, this was dangerous, I was afraid. It will be investigated as an illegal take of wildlife. That's what our Lieutenant Kyle Chang did out here a couple weeks ago, and got the first, person reports, and so essentially what happened in the case that reportedly bear and cubs were inside a house. The bear came outside of the house, outside the front yard. The neighbor was called, and I don't want to, not using any names or anything, and I just have the fuzzy secondhand view of it. My understanding was the bear was outside. There was an effort, the individual who had a firearm to try to, avoid, kind of protect people, human, health and life and safety, I should say. Not a cop, the neighbor. He tried to yell at, kind of shoo the bear away, I guess, because it was right nearby. Well, it went away, and then it came back and it charged him. And at that point, he felt threatened, and I think justifiably by our investigation, justifiably shot the bear. As you all hopefully have heard now, we have placed the 2 orphan cubs. They are at a really good facility. They're going to be released back into the mountains. We actually had a 3rd orphan cub from mom died of unknown causes, probably roadkill from Lake Arrowhead. They're all essentially like a little foster family now at this facility. So we've used them with good luck before. They are very specialized area that they minimize human contact. They throw in like a bucket of acorns, a roadkill deer, try to make them act like bears, and it has been, from my observation, successful. We've let out, rehabbed, kind of fattened up 1 year plus old cubs, and they just went out and started tearing apart a lot to be bears. So really, that's, it's an extreme case, and I'm sure nobody here, most people would not want the consequences of shooting a bear in their house. I mean, it's not easy to kill a bear, and the bear that was shot, we did not find its carcass. We know the description. It was shot in the shoulder. Oops. It was bleeding a lot. We were able to follow this trail quite a ways up the drainage, but we ultimately lost that trail. So pretty confident that bear died probably that night. Probably not a long time, but it wasn't. So we haven't found that. So somewhere a dog's going to find something smelly out there, and it's what you don't know is these things are going on all the time. When we have a roadkill deer or a bear, big animals, but a lot of the time they get clipped and they can move out off in the forest. And then I like to think well, that's circle of life. Everybody's got to eat. There's coyotes and ravens and everything else that's a scavenger. So that's essentially the disposition of the sow that was shot, and then the cubs.
How many California black bear attacks have there been in California in the last 10 years?
Attacks in California? I do not have the number off the top of my head, but it's less than one per year on average. You know, probably every few years or so we will hear about an attack. So that's a good question. I am going to get back to this list before we open it up and have our law enforcement colleagues.
Yeah, we have about 20 minutes left, so
okay.
we can.
Yeah, let's zip through this. I'm sorry about that. I can talk. If I leave my trash out, will I get arrested? That's one for law enforcement. My neighbor said I would. The trash is on my private property. So how can I get arrested for it? Well, you could get cited for it because we have county codes. Chapter 13, animal food and scraps. There's a couple codes that apply to the mountain communities. Food left outside for any animal during certain hours, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So these are citable offenses. Are you going to go to jail? No, but it would be a good reminder. You probably have to go deal with that with a court date, and probably have to pay a fine. We'd rather folks don't do that because, you know, that's what leads us into these situations of a bear that feels comfortable maybe going into a house or a car or just being in the neighborhood. Who do I complain to about a neighbor who's always leaving their trash out the night before trash pickups and it attracts bears? So those are those county ordinances, and I think I'm gonna hand this off to Luis and the captains, because I'm not the one that does that. I don't enforce citations and code. Maybe Warden Garcia would speak to that. I've got the list with the relevant codes printed out. Awesome, thank you.
Sorry I'm late, guys. No excuses, I'm just late.
At least make up a good story.
In case you want.
Alright, here it is, okay. Alright, bear with me. No? You already do it? I'm not used to talking to, this is a bigger crowd of people. I'm used to one-on-one when I'm patrolling, so bear with me. So when a game warden gets involved with any wildlife conflict, it's because we're responding to a carcass. Something's already happened, the bear is shot, and we're there to investigate and make sure it was legit and it wasn't a poached bear. I don't want to create the expectation that that's what a game warden's job is. We're not the animal control version of wildlife. Our job is to enforce hunting and fishing regulations. At least that's what's on my duty statement, and it's broken down perfectly on what we're supposed to do. So we are supposed to educate on what our job is. This county ordinance that Jeff was asking me to explain was not created with having the only 2 state game wardens in the county in mind to enforce. This is a county ordinance. It's not a state fish and game law or a California code of regulations for fishing and hunting. This is a specific to San Bernardino County for our area. So this is enforceable by any law enforcement. It can be written as a misdemeanor or a simple infraction, just a citation that you take care of paying the fine by mail. For those of you that would like this to be enforced, and I would like it too, I'm not saying that the game wardens are too good to come out here and write trash tickets, because we're not too good for that. We've done more inefficient things. But to get us out here, we're covering the largest county in the country, 5th largest in population, and 81% public land, which translates to the poaching of natural resources. That's what we're supposed to be looking after. The wildlife is a natural resource. It's just a little bit different when it's in town, what's happening in town, and it's causing human-wildlife conflict. So I'm not trying to say that the deputies should be, going up and down here, but somebody should. We should all a little bit, and I have done it. I have written this citation when it's just a continuing problem with a certain individual, and we keep getting reports for that same person. Then it makes it worth it. If local law enforcement's not doing it, then it'll be worth it for me to come out. Somebody's got to do it, but it's not going to work unless it's persistent and consistently done. If you've got the whole street, the whole block, and everybody's taking care of business and doing things right to not attract the animals in the area, all it takes is one of those neighbors that whose heart's in the right place. They love the wildlife, but they don't understand that them leaving their dog food out or intentionally leaving food out for the bears, feeding them donuts because they want to record it and put it on their Facebook. Their heart's in the right place, but they don't know what they're doing. They don't know that it's ruining the whole spot. The work that everybody's doing to eliminate that problem for the area is just all it takes is one person to not be doing it right. So I'll read you guys the ordinances word for word, the way they're written here. And the first one says it covers the unintentional way of attracting these animals. And it's not that you're doing it on purpose, it's just you're not supposed to do this. And it says no person shall feed or in any manner provide food for one or more non-domesticated mammal predators. That's the intentional one. The unintentional one reads that no person shall leave or permit to be left outdoors food for any animal between the hours of 10 p.m. on any one day and 6 a.m. of the following day. So 10 p.m. till 6 in the morning. Unless the area where the food is left is not accessible to non-domesticated mammal predators. This is the third one here that's specific to garbage. And it says no person shall leave or permit to be left outdoors any garbage containing food scraps without first securing said food scraps in closed containers. A person violating any provision of this chapter shall be guilty of an infraction or a misdemeanor. So, you guys are. I don't want you guys to start causing problems and ratting out your neighbors, and then you guys have a bad relationship. But something's got to be done to get everybody on the same page, and this is part of it. We're out here trying to educate. If we miss anything here today, at a minimum, take some of the pamphlets. Or if you don't have the ability to go online and go on our website to go down that checklist of things you need to do. Did you guys bring the pamphlets?
They're on that table.
Oh, okay.
They're on the table over there to the right.
All right, so that covers the county ordinance. When it comes to the game warden laws for baiting, that's different. Baiting is those laws are intended for us to catch guys who are setting bait for guys that are trying to hunt bears. Or hunt whatever. You can't bait in California when you're hunting. So those are that's a separate set of laws that we enforce. What else?
I think that's good on that. I know we have a bunch of questions specifically for the sheriff, but you might let me just see if any of these overlap. Let's see, one of these questions. Real quick, I think some of these are Luis just answered. If you catch someone baiting bears, do you want them to call a Cal-tip?
Yeah, so baiting Baiting's different. They're baiting, you know, it depends if they're on public or private land, if they're doing it to hunt. Either way, we wouldn't mind if you called the CalTIP. You could also call the non-enforcement line, the local law enforcement non-emergency line, if it's not baiting for the purpose of hunting. If it's people leaving their trash out, that's the number you need to call. If you think people are hunting bears over bait, that's our business. Hunting bears is not illegal; it's very strict, but we do promote hunting, lawful, ethical hunting. It has its seasons. I brought some of the hunter education books in case anybody's interested in that. The 150-yard thing, that's for ethical hunters that are within season. You can't hunt within 150 yards of any building, dwelling, or anywhere where a person can be found. Even if it's a porta potty or rundown shack, you just never know. So that's our restriction when it comes to where you can hunt. Every other restriction to where you can hunt is not Fish and Game Code. That's going to be city or county ordinances. So those supersede ours. We enforce hunting within 150 yards. That's what game wardens enforce. If there's a city ordinance that says you can't do it, that supersedes ours. That's stricter. That's not ours.
And that's really what's up next, I think. There's
Okay.
a bunch of questions about the
So yeah, call the CalTIP for baiting. Call the CalTIP for any resource violations. People cutting the whatever vegetation's up here. We catch a lot of guys cutting the manzanita, cutting the sage, cutting you name it. Some plants, the ceanothus, so many different kinds. I don't know what they are, but there's a market for everything. So if you guys see that, call it any of that stuff is resource violations.
Great. Thanks so much, Luis. Good. Hand back off to.
Well, my look of the questions here, it looks like there were just basically two areas left, and that's gun laws and traffic-related stuff, which we talked about before. So California is an open carry state. If you're carrying a weapon concealed, you have to have a concealed weapons permit, which you can apply for through the Sheriff's Department. Open carry is legal. There's an interesting question on here about shooting somebody or defending your property when someone's trespassing. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not going to get into the law in that way. Everyone needs to think about that for a minute, and thinking about that long term, and how much that could upend your life, even if you were to ultimately be in the right down the road 3 years from now with you and your lawyer in a courtroom somewhere, finally getting a judgment. Guns in general, yes, it's an open carry state. However, you need to be prepared for the response that you might get if you're walking around out here at 10 o'clock at night with a gun. As you saw just a couple nights ago, what was that, 2 nights ago? We were up here for a report of somebody who might have a firearm, and we had a helicopter, and I had my entire shift of deputies up here, and if we located somebody and we saw if they had a firearm, we're probably going to point guns at them. It's going to be a somewhat traumatic experience for whoever might be running around with a gun. And obviously we don't want any accidents. We don't want anything, you think that you're walking around with a gun legally, and somebody else has a difference of opinion and they're also armed. We would all be better off if we could just avoid all that from starting in the beginning. So there's the letter of the law, what you can do, and then there's what a common sense, normal person who doesn't want to get shot, doesn't want the cops telling them to lay face down on the ground. They don't want to go through all that, and those are all good things to keep in mind. Speeding, I think we've talked about before. Obviously, you're in the county area. We don't do, as a routine, we don't do speed enforcement in the county areas. Our cars are not equipped with radar up here in the county areas. We don't have handheld lasers, speed devices like they do in the city, where we do traffic enforcement. It's CHP's responsibility. I know they're probably hardly ever, if you see one, it's probably a miracle. And I feel for you. I'll apologize as a representative of law enforcement. All the county areas are underserved when it comes to traffic enforcement. We do the best that we can for you, which is probably mainly our presence. Hopefully, we've increased a little bit of that. Like I said, especially on weekends and when the snow's on the ground. People probably slow down a little bit when they see the cop cars up here. And I encourage the deputies to get up here as much as they can, especially on weekends when you have out of town people. A lot of times it's your own neighbors, your own people that are living here that are speeding here. That's my experience. You're all familiar with Deputy Cordova, Christian Cordova. He's your guy up here. So I think when we circled back to the whole county ordinance thing and repeated violations, he's going to be a good resource for you. Hopefully you've all introduced yourselves to him, and he spends quite a bit of time up here, I know. If you've got those issues, obviously you can call us, create a call for service. I'm not going to swear to you that 10 minutes later we're going to have a deputy pounding on somebody's door trying to issue them a citation for leaving their trash out or having their trash out an hour before it's getting picked up, or 2 hours, or whatever the regulation is. We'll get here when we can get here. We'll do the best we can for you. I encourage all the deputies to provide the best service that they possibly can. But if you've got a repeat problem,